have to flip between two systems in order to make this work. And so I don't think I can do the chat thing today, you know, in terms of attachments. That's advanced technology that I'm not going to go there. So thank you. So maybe we can go around the room and just have everyone, because we do have some new people on the line that haven't been in our calls before. Maybe we can just introduce our respective sort of organizations that we work for as we go around the room, and that'd be great. Sure, maybe you want to like start off and just call the names so that people know when they should be talking.
Sure, I can try to do that. Okay. All right, so I'll just go ahead and introduce myself. My name is Shara Hodges. I'm with Philanthropy Network Greater Philadelphia, and I'll turn it over to Mindy. If everyone else can just tag the next person, that would be a little bit easier for me.
Okay. Hi, I'm Mindy Aldridge. I'm the president of the Nelson Foundation, and we fund in Chester County as well as 3 other counties in the Philadelphia region. Is that enough? Yes. And I'm going to tag Tamla.
We're in again. So I'm Tamala Lewis. I'm the president and CEO of the Phoenixville Community Health Foundation. We're a place-based funder in the greater Phoenixville area, supporting primarily health, housing, and food security. And I will tag Chris.
I am Chris Sallow. I'm the president and CEO of the United Way of Chester County, and we have been around 75 years. Our roots are Coatesville United Fund, so they're our oldest. So happy to be here in Chester County. I tag Vanessa.
Good morning, Vanessa Briggs, president at Brandywine Health Foundation. We serve the greater Coatesville area, focusing on a broad perspective of health. So we're looking at the social determinants of health. I'll tag Michelle.
Good morning. My name is Michelle Legaspi-Sanchez. I'm the executive director of the Chester County Fund for Women and Girls. We've been around for over 20 years, investing in organizations that are ensuring that women and girls have the resources and opportunities to thrive. I'll tag Kimberly.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Kimberly Day Hardy, Strategy Officer with the Brandywine Health Foundation. You've already heard about our work. I am tagging Kathy.
Hi, I'm Kathy Brawner from Chester County Department of Human Services. We fund the information and referral services in Chester County and oversee all of the other categorical departments. And I'll tag Kim.
Hi, everyone. I'm Kim Paymaster. I'm a program officer at the Pew Charitable Foundation and Pew Charitable Trust. And we fund in the 5-county area in a variety of social services. I focus primarily on children, youth, and families programming. And I will tag Dana.
Good morning, Dana Hyman, White Health Foundation, and I work with Vanessa and Kimberly, and I apologize, I'm having technical difficulties, and that's why you don't see my face right now. And I tag Stephanie.
Can you hear us, Stephanie? We can't hear you.
I'm going to tag someone else.
No, Stephanie is with the Chester County Community Foundation, and I think she's probably trying to get her her mute off.
All right, great. All right, what about Betty?
Hey, good morning, everybody. Again, it's Betty Petton from Wells Fargo's Philanthropic Services, and so I work with individuals and families that are charitable and support them in the causes that matter to them.
Great.
I'm going to tag, I think, the remaining phone numbers that are listed here, but I'm not sure the names.
Hi, good morning. I'm Ashley Johnson with the Vanguard Group Foundation. I can't get Ring Central up on my Vanguard laptop, so I apologize that I am not having the opportunity to see and share as well with everyone else. Vanguard has been funding in Chester County and the surrounding area for 25 years, but in the last 2 years, we've launched an initiative called the Hometown Grants Program, where we train up sets of our employees who we call crew, and they get out in the community and make recommendations on how Vanguard can give. And so we help them learn how to develop many strategies and get nonprofits and get some dollars. So that I'm happy familiar names. I previously was with the Pat Century Health and Wellness Foundation and have been with Vanguard for about 2.5 years.
And my name is Tamara Scott. I'm with Vanguard as well and work with Ashley as a volunteer on the Hometown Grants program.
Excellent.
Great.
Did we get everybody? I think we did.
2 other people, I believe, on the phone.
So it sounded like the Pottstown Area Health and Wellness Foundation was tagged, and my name's Howard Burger.
Hey!
Good
morning.
For the foundation, serve in a number of areas in the Montgomery, First Chester County. I primarily work in schools and community development. Hey, Ash.
Great. And I think there's.
I love this call.
I think there's one other person. And then there's also Kathy Fong.
Hey, my name's Kathy. I'm with Network Philadelphia. I am the Membership and Operations Manager. Hello, everyone.
Great. Okay, well, thank you, Shira. So the Chester County Funders Group, as most of you know, is tri-chaired by Vanessa Briggs, Michelle Legaspi-Sanchez, and myself. And we had a formal call about 2 weeks ago, and we thought it would be a good idea to have a call periodically, just to regroup, just to see where we're at with respect to our Chester County funding, and especially in light of two current situations, the COVID-19, of course, that most of us are working on, as well as the census that we don't want to forget about. And Census Day was, I guess, 2 days ago at this point in time. So the call is really just an informal sort of sharing of information regarding where you're at in terms of the COVID fund, and if you are contributing or if you're participating in a situation in other ways. I think we wanted to share that information. A key goal of all of us, I know, is to sort of be sure that we're transparent and that we're sharing information as possible with the other funders, so that we're making sure that those who are the most vulnerable at this time are covered in our grant funding, and that we are following, sort of we're cognizant of what other organizations are doing in this area. So, it's a relatively informal agenda. We'll get through it as quickly as the speakers will allow, I guess. And then we'll decide whether we want to reconvene. So that would be great. So I work with the Chester County Community Foundation, as you all know. And I think what we'll do is maybe we'll take it in order of the faces that I see on the screen. That sounds funny. But I think, Vanessa, if you could talk a little bit about the Brandywine Health Foundation, and Dana and Kim, to the extent you want to chime in as well, that would be great. And just tell us where you're at in your process and what's going on with your COVID-19 funding. Oh, your microphone's not on. Hey, Vanessa, you want to unmute?
Yep. So the Brandywine Health Foundation, we opened up our healthcare and economic relief fund, I want to say March 20th, which feels like it was probably 4 months ago, but it was just recently. And we are in the process of vetting our first round of requests that we received. And so far, we have approximately 6 that are in the queue that we're going to be approving and hopefully being able to deploy resources out into the greater Coatesville area. Interestingly enough, because our fund focuses both on healthcare, mental health, behavioral health, but then we also have sort of the economic component, of which we're sort of looking at basic needs similar to other funders that are on the county. This first round is predominantly around telehealth, working with organizations to sort of transition and or increase their ability to do telehealth. What we are seeing is that we do have quite a bit of requests, and the request that we're getting actually exceeds the dollar amount that we have to deploy. And so we're going to do it in rounds. So this is going to be our first round, and then we'll regroup again. And next week, look at another set of organizations and make some funding decisions. And the other piece that I'll add to that is the approach that we're using at the Brandywine Health Foundation is sort of this healthcare economic relief fund. We're looking at immediately response and getting dollars out. But then I won't say take a pause, but we'll sort of shift a little bit and focus on our well-being fund, which is our general operating grants. And we're gonna make sure that we're able and poised to get those dollars out probably the beginning of May if the three of us can kind of continue to hold tight and do the work that we're really trying to do. So we're sort of looking at rapid response, pause, general ops, and then regroup again and see where we're at with respect to rapid response and see where we can fill in some gaps, given the fact that there are several funders that are on this call that are also funding Chester County. And Kimberly, Dana, please chime in if I missed anything.
Hey, Vanessa.
Did somebody want to say something?
Yeah, if you could identify yourself as well.
So this is Dana Hyman, and Vanessa, I think you did a great job of covering what we're doing. I'm just really looking forward to hearing what everybody else is doing so that we can collaborate a bit, because I think there's probably a lot of duplication in the requests, and I think we have over 20 at this point, and there's just so much need out there.
Yeah, I agree. Feel free to ask questions as we go along, because I think that's important as well. Vanessa, can you talk a little bit about the structure that you're using in terms of the review process?
So we have a grant review that we just launched a brand new committee in the middle of COVID-19. And so we had an emergency board meeting and made the decision that it would be too difficult to get a brand new grant review committee up to speed, get them familiar with the foundation, because we're making a concerted effort to expand our grant making committee beyond our board members. So we've opened it up to ensure that we have community members as part of our review process. But given the fact that they're not as familiar with the foundation and this needs to be rapid deployment, the board gave the staff approval for the rapid release funds. And then anything over a certain threshold will bring in and get approval from that grant review committee. I'm trying to gear the grant review committee up for the general operating dollars, because I think that probably will have some more time to sort of work with them. It just so happened that we were in the middle of transitioning the whole entire group, that we felt that we had the bandwidth to get them up to speed, educate them about the foundation, and then make funding decisions. Because when you're expanding your grant review committee to include community members, we need to make sure that there's an educational component and orient them to the foundation. And we wanted to kind of quickly get these out the door.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And how many applications did you mention you've received?
Let me see. I have my spreadsheet here. I'm going to say 1, 2, 3, 4. I'm counting, sorry.
No, that's okay. I was just curious in terms of percentages, maybe.
21.
Mm-hmm.
We completed, and then we have about 3 or 4 that process. They're in draft form.
Okay. So as you complete your process, would you be able to share who you funded in dollar amounts? Yeah. That would be great.
Our goal is anybody similar to you, Beth, anybody that we're going to be funding, we're going to be posting on our website, so that this way people can gain access to see who we funded, how much we funded, and what we funded them for. And so that's probably the best way to find the information out in terms of who we're funding. That's the process that we're going to be using right now.
Okay, great. Thank you. Any other questions for Vanessa on the Brandywine Health Foundation's process?
Hi,
Yeah,
this
Beth,
is Cindy. Sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
Hi, Vanessa. I don't think I heard you say this, but is there sort of a grant range that you're looking at?
Yeah, so our grants range in between 5 and 15,000. And so we're sort of really looking at them to determine total project. We ask them to give us the total project cost and then how much they're requesting from us. And the range is in between 5 and 15,000. So on average, this first round, we're falling in between about 7,000 for each award that we're going to be giving out in this first round.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hey, Vanessa.
Yeah.
Hi, Vanessa. Good morning. It's Betty. Everyone asked all the great questions I was going to ask. My only remaining question is for grantee applications. Had you done? This is not a leading question, but was there any changes made in terms of the burden placed on grantees in the application process at all? I mean, that's something that I'm looking at with individuals and families is understanding what others are doing as far as the ask and what we do with the application, if it's at all a scaled down version or if there's minimal requirements with that for what information you're gathering.
Yeah, we actually modeled our application off of what Philadelphia Foundation and United Way of Southeastern Pennsylvania and Southern New Jersey, we modeled our application off of their application, which is very short and sweet, and it's not an onerous process. And I believe other funders who are on the call also used a very easy, rapid application. So it's not a big lift for people to fill out. So we did modify our application process, and Kimberly can really get into the details because that's a system that we're using, which we've been using for quite some time in our grant making, and Kimberly's been trying to get that up and running on the technical side.
I was just going to quickly add to the Foundin. I know many of you use Foundin as well, but the other piece to help support the burden, if you will, of an application is that we also opened up office hours to be able to give potential applicants the opportunity to ask questions. So we hosted a call for our grantee partners, but from that point, you could schedule these sort of 15-minute Q&A sessions. You could send your questions ahead of time, and that was very effective to help folks really streamline or give input, without saying this is exactly what you need to write, but give them, that opportunity to ask questions. And so we found that to be effective. We opened up the office hours for 2 days, but since that time, I think the word has just spread. So I've been fielding those calls all week, and some of them have been very basic for those, with staff turnover. Perhaps there were some that were just new to the system, and others that had a lot of broad ideas, if you will. And so to sort of help them drill down, if you will, it was and I think that would have just been way too much. So 10-minute, 15-minute max bites to help answer questions, and found that to be pretty effective. I'm seeing the proposals come in. I mean, Vanessa, those numbers are growing daily because I've seen, I wasn't awake, but I did see some 2 and 3 a.m. applications. So it's moving pretty quickly.
We intentionally held off on funding food right now because there's so many requests for food, and I think that's where some coordination can kind of take place. And so because we didn't want to disrupt that direct service, and we have the healthcare component plus the economic and basic relief, like I said, this first round really focused a lot on the healthcare side, telehealth, supporting a couple of rescue Keystone Valley Fire Rescue. So we really focused that first round on that. And then this next round, we'll get into some basic needs around rental assistance, food insecurity, et cetera.
Thank you.
Thank you. That was very helpful. Thanks.
Yeah, no, thank you. That was great. Maybe Tamla, because you're also a place-based funder, what have you seen?
So we're doing some stuff that's similar, some stuff that's a little different than what Brandywine is doing. We so far have gotten in, I was just looking at my spreadsheet here, 8 applications. One of them just came in yesterday. The total request for us, most of those are fairly small amounts. We have one for 20. The rest of them are we had one for 24 actually was our highest. So we have about $66,000 in request, so we still have funds for that. We've funded, of the 7 that we've really looked at and considered so far, we funded 6 of those. And we intentionally kept our requirements, or well, partially requirements, but also kind of priorities for this pretty vague, because we just didn't know what was going to come in, and the board wanted to kind of keep that open. But it's been, as I've kind of gotten a sense about what the board's funding, we do require organizations, so Randy Wayne, even before they can submit anything, they need to call. And that's been really helpful for us also to help organizations solidify requests. A lot of our groups are still, their heads have been spinning, they've been changing services, and they're not yet ready to submit a request, but they're thinking about it. And so we'll have maybe an initial conversation and a follow-up a few days later, and then they're ready to submit. So we did actually a lot of work around food initially. I think partly that's because I do have a background in that. And so I've been in conversations a lot with some of the food providers in the Phoenixville area. And there was just a lot of work with the borough around getting our food system prepared for what we assume is going to be an onslaught. So that was a lot of our first requests were around food and kind of basic needs. We have one organization that's kind of serving as the intake group for anybody that needs services. So they came in with a request fairly early. And now we're starting to see a few other things. So now the telehealth calls are starting to come in for us. But we're still seeing some of the basic needs kind of crop up as well. And I think we were expecting rental assistance to be a need. Still expect some of the pronouncements from Harrisburg around postponement of evictions. And there's talk about encouraging landlords to give renters either a break or not necessarily expect rent checks on the first of the month. We might see a little bit of a delay in that as well. So I'm a little surprised that we haven't seen more requests at this point, but Phoenixville does take care of itself pretty well. And so a lot of organizations are getting donations and they're getting volunteers to come in where appropriate. And so for the moment, I've been on several calls with lots of different organizations, and they're stable. And they're worried, but they're stable. So for those organizations that are continuing to operate, they're not in panic mode at the moment, which is good to hear. Couple other things to just, I did send out an email yesterday. I wanted to just kind of refer back to that. Our decision-making process is our executive committee. So the board, we had a board meeting on March 12th where we kind of set this fund up, and the board decided at the time to have our executive committee serve as the decision-making body for this group. It's been actually good because I've been able to convene them rather quickly on a Zoom call. The calls have been short and sweet, primarily because we have done a lot of the vetting ahead of time before those proposals get to them. We have really, another potential limiting factor is we decided to just open it up to only our current grantees. I have made a couple of waivers for organizations based on services that they're providing that I think are important. And unfortunately for those, we do need to do a little bit more due diligence. So we're requiring some more financial documents, and it's taking just a couple of days longer, but we are still trying to make those a quick turnaround. And my staff actually was able to set up an electronic fund transfer process. Don't ask me the details. That's beyond my skill set about knowing that. But we are able to get the checks out within a day or two once the grant agreement comes back to us. So we know we're going to see more applications, but that's what we've got in the pipeline so far. And things are nicely calm at the moment for the most part, but we know it's coming.
Okay. Thanks, Tamla. Any questions for Tamla and the Phoenixville Community Health Foundation? Tamla, as promised, I'm going to shoot you over the list of grantees that we have that are coming from that area for your insight and input as well.
Great.
That would be great.
Tamla, this is Vanessa. I have a question. Do you have a range in terms of the dollars that you're funding, and can you talk a little bit about how much people are asking for, what you're seeing so far?
So we don't have a published range. Again, the board didn't want to necessarily limit itself to anything. I will tell you that right now, our largest grant that we have given out, I think, is $12,000. We have, again, a request that just came in for 20. I would be shocked if they spent more than 20 at this point because we have limited dollars. The other thing that I'm seeing from the board is now that these loan programs are starting to come out from the government, some of my board are wanting organizations to apply for those, and if they get rejected, then potentially come back. Now that depends on the request. I have mixed feelings about that, but that's kind of where my board's head is at the moment.
Oh, thank you. Chris, do you want to cover United Way's
Sure.
approach?
So we kicked off our countywide COVID relief fund on Monday, March 16th. You know, like I didn't have enough to do 48 hours prior to kicking off, my VP of development resigned to take a new position. So,
wow.
That has made it fun. Real well. So I think it started off slow. When we launched, that first week, we only had about 40,000. So when we were getting the grant application set up, which followed a week later from when we kicked off, we had set a limit of 5,000 for the grants. Got some significant funding in, and I believe hopefully today we will cross $500,000, and I have another soft offer of another 100. So we've kind of reset goals. Our executive committee yesterday decided we're going to set a $1 million goal by June 30th. And we had our first meeting of our review panel. Our review panel is made up of the Impact co-chairs, Timmy Nelson and David Zimmerman. Timmy's a retired UPS executive, and David is an executive at QVC. And they've been in those roles on our normal grant processing for years. So we felt they would be great leaders for that. And then there's including our own Beth Harbor-Brilia, who is serving on that, as well as one of the county commissioners and some other business leaders. And we had our first, so we got 4 applications initially, totaling about 200,000 in requests. We had changed the criteria. We had a significant gift that was geographically restricted to Southern Chester County. So we loosened the boundaries on their grants to go up to 15 instead of 5. We had our first review last week. We made 20 grants totaling $119,000 Wednesday. I believe we were notifying them yesterday, and we did make sure as part of the process, we were screening to see if we had their ACH information already, since we do distribute a lot of donor designated funds, and we had all of them. So the money will hit their accounts today. Grants ranged from 2,000 all the way up to 20,000, and there were things on there like food insecurity. We decided to go that route because we know of a few that need the support, frankly, and it went all the way from homeless and services and prevention to things that the committee deemed critical. Like I said, grants range from 2 to 20. That was just our first round. Maybe a weekly conversation. We have gotten 6 more grants in. So basically what we are doing with it is we're telling them about their grants. We're also, while we notify them about their grants, we're informing them about the Payroll Protection Act and some of the other SBA programs, and encouraging them to pursue them, because that could also give them some of that operational support that they need. We're informing the ones that we didn't select at this time on that same thing. And what we're basically saying, we didn't really say no to any of them. What we did was we put about a dozen or dozen and a half on, we called it, we deferred the decision. And what we're saying is and will be taken up again in future meetings. We really tried to focus on immediacy and direct service and basic needs in that first round. Some of them were for things like summer camps and things that just weren't critical, time-sensitive things. So they're on that deferred list. And what we're also communicating with them is to say, look, we recognize things are changing rapidly. If something changes in your organization and you see a new emerging need, or you have more information or different information, feel free to swap out your current proposal with us for a new proposal that's updated. So we're trying to be as flexible as we can there. And, with respect to the people that submitted grants, I think a few were chasing money. A few have real significant needs. And we think this is going to be a marathon, not a sprint. So we want to make sure we build up that fund enough. The other thing too is, in conversations with the county, and Pat Bakovitz in particular, and I also sit on the Workforce Development Board, we know there's going to be a lot of money dumped on the county very quickly. Probably things like rental assistance and some other things. And I did see that Pennsylvania passed some kind of eviction extension today through April. So we held back on a lot of things that we know will be needs, but just maybe aren't necessarily needs today. And it's a learning process. We're kind of going through it, and we're learning. We had a couple. There was I think 3 different grant proposals that included money for PPEs. We learned, having one of the county commissioners on the group, that 2 of those organizations were able or can get free PPEs through the county. So we did not end up having to fund those grants. We just needed to educate them that they had access to free PPEs. And the third one can get access possibly for free PPEs. Money and need, there was a fee. Our group kind of left it loose that we could help them with some of that funding. So it's been an interesting process. Beth, I don't know if you have anything to add on that.
No, I mean, I think to Chris's point, there were clearly some things that fell within United Way's funding purview and were immediate needs related to COVID-19. But there were a few organizations in your funding pool where the need was there, but it didn't fall into your immediate priorities or your fields of interest as it related to your foundation, I'll say. So that was an intriguing process. I think, the rapid response in terms of how that took place. I mean, I think that's a great sort of thing that the committees were able to come together quickly and make decisions quickly. And the ACH actually helps. That's one thing I wish we had access to. That was our summer project. So it's not as organized and coordinated as United Ways, let's put it that way. But thank you. One
last thing, in terms of like food insecurity, it's not just the access to the food. And if you've talked to any of the shelters, and if you read the Daily Local on Monday, the article about the Chester County Food Bank, there are supply chain issues that are causing a lot of difficulty in getting the food.
Yeah.
So, we've tried to look at things in addition. So there's also newer requirements in terms of that food cupboards would need to do to accept food donations. And so we worked with the Kennedy Community Services, who normally does a 3-day-a-week food distribution, Monday, Wednesday, Friday. They've had to cut all the way back to Fridays because they can't really have people coming in, dropping off the donations. Those donations now have to be cleaned, checked for expiration, sorted, packaged, and they don't have the space for that either. But that can be, they need food distribution. And so that's a big hit on that community. So we connected them with the Kennedy YMCA, which happens to be empty right now. And they're looking for a way to get engaged. So I believe Leah and Tom Gallagher are meeting today. And they're going to set up a staging area at the YMCA where the food can be collected, cleaned, checked, sorted, packaged, And then CACs will either distribute right from the Y, or the food will then be brought over packaged to CACs where it can be distributed in their normal thing. But as soon as next week, they may be back to 3 days a week of food distribution. So there are challenges with the cupboards. Honeybrook Food Pantry last Wednesday, they had record distribution, 507 people in 3 hours. And the entire day before that, I was working with them because their food order for bread got cut to 0 from 120 loaves, and their meat order got cut, and they could not get their hands on. We were with an owner of a supermarket, was able to help them out, and he's going to become an ongoing help with the supply chain for them. But there are some unique needs that are going on with the cupboards that I think are beyond the food bank's ability right now. And so I think there is a place for all of us to support the work that the food bank is doing and the cupboard. So I just wanted to mention that because that was a little different direction that we went. And we will fund that collaborative project between the Y and CACs.
And if I can just add to that, because Chris is right, there are challenges with the supply chain. And so one of the things that we've talked about in Phoenixville is I suspect that we're going to run out of meat. That's already a challenge in a lot of grocery stores, and I think it's just going to be even more of a challenge for cupboards. And so we've kind of started the conversation about how can we get people calories? And it's it would be great if we could get folks their choice. It would be great if we could get folks healthy food, but we may run into a situation where we just need to get calories into people. And so we're also concerned about some of the food pantries, have limited staff, have limited volunteers. What happens if they get sick? So our borough has actually worked with a couple of organizations. They worked with some of the restaurants, first of all, to secure some freezers and refrigeration space and walk-in refrigerations and freezers. So that might be something for folks to look at. So when we do have perishable items, we have extra storage for that. And there is an organization in Phoenixville that has agreed to allow the borough to store non-perishable stuff, so that if we have an influx of food, that there is a space for that. So that might be, again, for organizations and funders that are working on that, that might be something to think about. We're just really trying to do disaster planning around that.
Yeah. Thanks, Chris and Tamala, for that, because as I mentioned, we haven't quite delved into the food space just yet. And then I can share with the group, and you may already know this, that in my conversations with the food bank, they're going to start to see a decrease in their supply. And they were telling me that there's such great needs across the state, more particularly they get their food from Share, and Share is diverting a lot of their food to sort of in the Philadelphia area because they have a great need. And so for the greater Coatesville area, they said right now they're okay, and they've increased distributions by about 30% in the greater Coatesville area. And so we're just trying to figure out how do we identify missing gaps where they know people don't go to the pantry, and how do we get food out to those individuals like Township, Fallowfield, and East and West Brandywine. That's sort of where they're targeting within the greater Coatesville area. And in the city, they said that the food pantries seem to be running okay. And I tried to share with the food bank that right now they may appear to be okay, but we know that there are people who typically don't utilize the pantry and may not want to utilize the pantry for pride issues. And so we know that we have pockets of people that we have to sort of figure out how do you create another distribution cycle beyond just our pantries and other existing places where food being distributed. So I promise that you made, because we have to sort of figure all of that out and try to complement what's already happening. And then with respect, I know the county's on the line and their FEMA distribution, they're trying to figure out how are they going to make sure that the FEMA food is also going to be complementary to what we're all doing. So it is a little complicated, and it is unique to each area.
Very much so. Are there other, I mean, the Community Foundation has a fund as well, and I'd like to speak to that, but are there others callers who may be on the line who have also set up COVID-19 related funding? Okay. So the Chester County Community Foundation, we have Stephanie Stevens on the line as well with respect to that. So let me talk a little bit about the foundation in general, and then I'm going to turn it over to Stephanie to talk specifically about the grant making side of it. So the foundation, early on, we recognized that we had the power of our individual and family donors and able to, in order to sort of match needs in the county with the individual and family donors that we had. And to date, we've given out, although our website says about 185,000, I know internally it's closer to about 220 at this point in time, in terms of grant funding through the generosity of our individual and family donor advised funds, where they've been able to fund specific needs and causes. And so we, again, utilizing the relatively simple grant application, and mostly for the benefit of our donors as well as our own COVID-19 funding. We solicited applications from the field, primarily in the areas of, you know, is it increased demand for services? Is it a shift in the way you need to deliver services because of COVID-19, such as telemedicine and things like that? Or are you having difficulty from a revenue perspective because you've had to change your method of operation? The Community Foundation deals with organizations across all fields of interest, so arts and culture, as well as health, human services, education, et cetera. And so our applications, we have about 60, I want to say it's about 60, Steph, I haven't looked recently, but I want to say it's in the 60 range of grant applications that came on file at the Community Foundation that cover all of those different fields of interest, as well as all of those different topics in terms of what they're seeking funding for. So our first goal, quite frankly, was to be as transparent as possible so that we could share with our donors what the needs are in the field, and what we've seen is their response to sort of funding those organizations, as is to be expected, that are closest to their heart, as well as others. And we've had tremendous response from that group. Our second focus, ready to launch that part, was to take monies that were raised specifically for our COVID-19 fund, from the of our charity and revenues related to that, but we never held the event. So we've rededicated those, as well as having other funds from the field. And that's a much smaller pool of money, I'll be honest with you. We've taken in some grants from some organizations that wanted us to take the lead in terms of the funding for them, like a Rotary Club and a corporate entity that had a location in Malvern, but they're not located here. Small dollars, a couple foundations. So those of you on the line, I thank you for that as well. And so we're getting ready to deploy those funds. One of the things I wanted to mention is that we have been working very diligently to sort of pair those donors with the causes they need, and it's been very hard actually in terms of their responses to that. So Stephanie, maybe you can talk about our community-based panels that are getting ready to convene, and sort of how the structure of those, so that we will be seeing dollars go out specifically from that COVID-19 funding.
Yes, good morning, everyone. So the panels themselves are, and the whole design of them is kind of ever evolving, depending upon what the situation merits. But as of today, what we decided to do was convene panels bi-weekly with different community members. And we're kind of targeting geographic areas in Chester County, and matching them with people who have contributed from the same area, kind of the theory of giving in your backyard kind of situation. To date, we have actually 68 grant requests on our website, and the total of money that's being asked for with those grants is about $375,000. And one of the reasons why I think maybe that number is a little bit lower is we did tell the nonprofits that we do have a range. It's going to be between $2,500 and $5,000. The majority, from what I can see when I look at the proposals that are coming in, is it's the requests, kind of all fall around general operating right now with them. Whether it's, having to change how they're, working with their clients, or if it's, has to do with lost revenue from fundraisers, that kind of thing. So as I said, we'll probably have our first panel next Thursday. That's what it's looking like to shape up. And from there, we'll be able to, internally, we have a great system to get the money out right away. And we'll be able to turn things around, and we'll continue on for as long as this goes on, and for as long as we can, stretch the money.
Thanks, Steph. I appreciate that. The other thing I wanted to mention was, and I think somebody else alluded to this as well. We're seeing a great amount for technical assistance in terms of what are the dollars that are available that they can otherwise access. So for instance, the SBA and the loans and the payroll relief and things of that nature. And so on our website, we've tried to keep up to date with some of that information and pushing out as much as we can about calls that may be taking place from the professionals in those particular areas. So whether it's the SBA or the Chamber of Commerce, whoever it might be, because what we have found, and I'm not sure who quite mentioned this, but maybe it was Tamala or Chris, that there are going to be other funding mechanisms available for some of these requests that we've gotten in place. And while those funding mechanisms such as rental assistance, et cetera, aren't quite known at this point in time, we're hoping that the nonprofit sector will benefit from that as well. So that's a little bit about what the community foundation's doing, again, in this field.
Hey, Beth,
Yeah.
or Stephanie, this question's for Beth or Stephanie. It's Betty again. I know that you're looking at, all nonprofits, and of course there are needs both for food insecurity as well as the arts. Do you know yet proportionally of the grant, either requests or the grants that are approved and going out the door, proportionally? Do you know, can you categorize, for a pie chart, food insecurity versus maybe direct health related versus arts, et cetera?
Yeah, Stephanie, I'm going to take this from the donor advised perspective because that's the number that's gone out the door.
Yeah.
So by far, and we are blessed to have a donor who lives in the southern part of the county who is extremely generous to what I will call immediate needs, whether it's health in the terms of La Comunidad Hispana, or whether it's food in terms of Kennedy Community Services, or shelter in terms of majority of the actual physical dollars that have gone out the door have been towards what I will say basic needs types of situations. I do have a number of donors, though, that have also started to fund arts and culture related organizations, certainly not in the magnitude that I'm seeing the basic needs being funded, but I have seen that, and I know there's a few more that are coming online that aren't on our website yet that will also be funding in the arts and culture arena. It's difficult, I'll be honest with you. In this time where immediate needs are so important, even the donors that tend to fund arts and culture are funding the immediate needs types of questions.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, understandable. Thanks, Beth. Appreciate it.
Yeah, Stephanie, do you have any comment from what you've seen in terms of what's come through the door in terms of the requests?
It's across the board. I think it's actually fairly evenly split. Arts and culture, they're really worried about revenue sources, and this is prime fundraising season for them. So, or field trip season in some cases, and obviously all those got canceled left and right. So I do see a little bit more of an uptake that I would have expected, maybe, in terms of those, but I think for the most part, when I look at the proposals, they're all really evenly distributed.
I will say that one of the things that we've been doing, and it's kind of a one-off situation kind of from a technical assistance perspective, is, we know that the Greater Philadelphia Cultural Alliance and others, I believe it's William Penn perhaps, have separate funds that they're setting up as it relates to arts and culture. And under GPCA, they're actually looking at supporting individual artists as well, although I'm not sure of the format of that fund or how it's been set up. So we've been trying to avail those nonprofits, at least to let them know who might be funding in that arena. So I'm curious from the other funders on the call who fund broader than I'll say, health, human services, et cetera. What are you seeing in the arts and culture field?
This is Ashley from Vanguard. Sorry.
Ashley?
I'll just say quickly, yeah, we are getting lots of requests, lots and lots of different requests. I agree that the prime season for fundraising is gone. So we're getting a lot of inquiries, and we've stepped through similar line of thinking around, you know, are we looking at an increase in the demand of services, a shift in the delivery, or just difficulty with the revenue? And similar to what many people have said, trying to figure out what the priority is first, but we're also trying to listen for gaps. So just would reiterate what the Chester County Community Foundation shared.
Thanks, Ashley. I appreciate that. Mindy, can you talk a little bit about what's happening from the Nelson Foundation's grantees perspective in terms of this time?
Sure. And some of you may have heard some of this before, so I apologize for any repeats. The things that we have already done, overall, we're trying to move up as much as possible our grant budget spending earlier in the year. So that has included that all second-year grant payments, we make 2-year grants, were out the door last Friday. So that's through the fourth quarter, second-year grant payments. In addition, we have now delivered by email to our directors our spring grant application evaluations, and have asked them to provide feedback to us by the end of day Monday. So we hope to get our spring grant making done by the end of next week, which would be almost 3 months early, which would be awesome. In addition, I've encouraged the directors, they each have a small budget of discretionary funds to consider making their discretionary director's grants as soon as possible. Normally they wait to the end of the year. So, but I've encouraged them that this would be a perfect time to do that. I will say, as I've heard, I think Tamala also say that our focus is on our current grantees. So that also means that anybody who is in the grant pool for the spring grant cycle who is a new applicant is going to get an email from us saying that we are going to try to just defer them to the next round, but we'll see how that goes. Next action, so things that are on the horizon. We have freed up about $100,000 of additional grant money to go to existing grantees. And once Jenny and I get through the spring grants getting paid, we're going to turn our attention to what we think might be the best approach for getting that money out the door and propose that to the directors. But I would think that we would be taking at least partial action on some of that money very soon. And then may reserve some. Also been talking to the Patricia Kind Family Foundation about how they make loans, and have talked to our investment advisors about what they would be comfortable with if the directors approved having some loan money available. So it looks like pretty easily, without disrupting an already fairly disrupted portfolio, that they would be good with, you know, very comfortable with $100,000 being available for loans. So that will also go to, a proposal will go to the director shortly on that as well. And then the last thing that we're looking at very actively, that will be sort of the second round of concrete recommendations to the directors, is how we might move up our second grant cycle, which typically gets paid in December, and whether or not we can move that much earlier in the year. So we're looking at all those. Obviously, any of this early grant making has meant the going ahead and making grants, additional grants or possibly new grants without reporting on prior grants. But that's kind of where we are. Lots of conversations with the various nonprofit partners that we support, and trying to be as much as possible a funnel of information to them, as well as a resource just for conversations and just hearing what's kind of going on the ground. And a lot of them have completely stopped their normal programming, and they're thinking about, some of them are actually pushing online pretty quickly to deliver programming. So we do children and youth. I should have mentioned that for those of you who don't know us. But there's a lot of basic needs switching. So they may not have been a basic needs organization, but that's what they're trying to do now.
Excellent, excellent. Thanks, Mindy. I will say, on the loan situation side, there was a great, and if you don't have it, I'll have to find it for you. We have a fund of ours that's looking at doing some lending from their endowment fund. It's more of a business-related improvement district fund that we hold. And yesterday, Philanthropy Exchange sent around a very easy loan document. So I will find that and I will send that to you. You may find that of use. I know that I found it very useful because we do have a loan document in place for one of our other funds, but you know, this one was very interesting.
And that's what, you know, the Patricia Kind Foundation was very kind to forward on a number of their simpler loan type of documents. So that's what I'm starting to take a look at and see what I might propose to the directors.
Yeah, I actually think, and we hold about 80 nonprofit endowment funds. And unfortunately, there would be a lot of nonprofits who, from a business perspective, will be impaired for years to come over this situation. And so I've been looking at that situation specifically from our nonprofit endowment funds, because inevitably the request will come, can we release the funding? And make a long story short, these are permanently endowed funds. And so there are some situations there. So I've been looking into the lending component of this, because I think it will be something that's going to come in a variety of different ways, not only to the community foundation, but also funders in terms of, would you lend a piece of your endowment on some kind of a revolving or repayment loan type of a basis. So.
Right. And I think from our perspective, and just for, you know, others who might be on the line, who might be similar to us, the first priority is, we already had a grant budget for this year. So how can we accelerate getting that money out the door? So that's number one. And I think you know, I'm hearing some others thinking, well, there are other programs people are going to be able to apply to. You know, I think that the loan be the backside of the grant piece. So it's, you know, number one, pushing out all that grant money as soon as possible that we're planning on spending. I'm sure the directors are also going to be looking at increasing the grant budget as well. But the loan piece could go side by side with that. Mm-hmm. So, but, you know, if you had $1 million or $2 million in your budget to spend, to the extent that you can push that forward to
yeah, I would agree. So I know, yeah.
It's Betty, and I'll just, what I've heard sort of mirrors what I'm seeing with the individuals and families with whom I work. But the couple of things that I would add, because you asked specifically, like, what are people doing about the arts? So first and foremost, of course, every individual and family is as unique as every individual and family is. So their area of funding will differ by household. But for folks who have traditionally given more to the arts, for example, they are looking to give more towards human services and the healthcare needs at this moment. What they are doing for the arts is two things. They're looking back at any commitments that had been made and or multi-year pledges, and saying to those nonprofits, we are more than happy to lift the restrictions that were around a specific program or project. And if those dollars are better spent towards your operating costs because the programs are either on hold or in jeopardy, then you tell us what you need, and we can just go ahead and lift those restrictions and allow it to go operating costs. No questions asked and no documentation needed. So that is one way to relieve that burden. And then with regards to their budget, whether their budget, you know, I have some foundations, their budget is, you know, $12 million annually. Some are $500,000 annually. They are taking a look at remaining strategic with an eye towards the future, because we know that this is, you know, going to be going on for some time. But they are moving up meetings, or at least I'm asking them to sort of take half of that annual budget, maybe cut it in half and do some immediate response now. So I would say most everybody is doing that in terms of the clients with whom I work in my portfolio. Everybody is willing to take action now, but they are wanting to stay a bit strategic, knowing that we are in this for the long haul and that there are cultural institutions or animal welfare institutions that they want to reserve some funds for the future. So they aren't sort of releasing all of their annual funds right now. They're just releasing maybe a half or a portion of those. So hopefully that's helpful, and I'm happy to answer any questions. If folks have questions for me about that, you can send me an email.
No, that's really helpful. Thank you, Betty. I appreciate your participating on the call today and giving it and showing it from the individual's perspective too, because I think there are ongoing costs as well that those individuals need to keep in mind as they may shift dollars here and there for specific immediate needs. There's the ongoing cost of operations for those nonprofits as well that we've been trying to work with our donors on as well. I know we have some representatives from Vanguard. Do you have any comments regarding Vanguard's sort of approach and what you guys might be doing as it relates to this?
Yeah, definitely. So this is Ashley. We are thinking about this response across a whole number of pieces. Obviously, we're thinking globally, regionally, and locally. So regionally, we are launching an emergency relief fund. You might have seen partnership with the William Penn Foundation. That'll be focused in Philadelphia. Also in Philadelphia, we did join the Philadelphia Foundation's COVID-19 response. We've made a contribution to Phil Abundance, and we're considering support of anchor institutions like arts and culture in the city specifically. Locally, we are continuing, historically we run a hunger relief drive in the summer, and so we've actually moved that up. It's called All Cans on Deck. It's sort of like all hands right now. We're providing a one-to-one match on any employee contribution over $25. I would say that's going to impact local organizations like Chester County Food Bank and the cluster in terms of those dollars. And I think thus far we've raised about $150,000 in the last like 5 or 6 days. So that's great.
That's incredible.
We also, it's like unbelievable how generous the employees are.
Yeah.
So, and they're like beating down our door to know what they could do, which is amazing. We have this hometown program. Hometown is set up in our major sites. So we have it in our Malvern office, in Charlotte, North Carolina, in Phoenix, and in London at the moment. And it's designed to give in 2 different ways. It's like hyper-local, unrestricted gifts for us to be a good corporate neighbor. And then we also restrict and make grants for specific cause areas, depending on what the need is. So in others, our PA team was focused on financial empowerment. In Charlotte, for example, we were doing food and housing security. So each committee kind of does a needs assessment and figures out what they want to support. We are going to be directing our hometown dollars in Pennsylvania outside of the city. And they have a remaining budget around $450,000 for this year. So we're really playing the listening game right now, really trying to figure out where we can collaborate, where we can be most useful, seeking to understand the communities that had existing challenges before the crisis and are now seeing needs exacerbated from the pandemic. Their strategy for the rest of the year. And that's why we thought it was so great for the opportunity to join this call and kind of hear what's going on. In addition to that, we are launching an emergency relief response similar to everybody else that's going to support existing partners. So I would bet that we have about 100 existing partners in Pennsylvania, a good chunk in the city, but then I would say maybe 60%, 70% outside of the city. And doing the same thing, understanding what's spiking and emerging versus organizations for whom revenue is suffering, thinking about their workforce, long-term instability for existing partners that we've been with for a while. So I would anticipate grant ranges between $5,000 and $50,000, $10,000 and $50,000, and trying to do what everybody else is doing around expediting, figuring out what we can make unrestricted, and being responsive. So I've been listening in and couple things that we've been thinking about. One is like looking at all of the surveys in the region. The Philanthropy Network did deploy a survey, and I'm not sure that I saw any results from it yet, and so I would love to follow up on that. And then I'm also curious how people are saying no during this time. I heard one answer of like, not yet, or, we'll defer you. But we do anticipate, just like everybody else, having more in requests than we're going to have the ability to respond to.
Thank you. That's great. So I'll just touch on the survey for a minute, and Shira, certainly if you want to jump in as well. So the survey is being organized, I think, by someone in the Philadelphia, with Philanthropy Network and in the Philadelphia government. Her name is escaping me right now. It's the Mayor's Office of Policy. And so I did send out last night was their current results. Many of the funders on this call pushed it out to our various organizations that fund. And they to 1,000 responses, of which 400 they considered complete. That means I think you put your name and your contact information on there. But about 200 of those responses actually were from Chester County. And take a look at the summary results. It is very interesting. What we're trying to do is get one view for the region, I would say. But it is interesting to look at. And again, most of the summary results are things that you would imagine, changes in methods of dealing with staff not being on site, revenue losses and things of that nature.
Hi, yeah, this is Shara. I just put in the chat box the link to that survey result on the Google Documents, and Kathy just added the name of the person at the city who's coordinating, Anjali. She is also speaking weekly at our weekly funder briefing calls that are being recorded, and Kathy has been posting that up to the website. So you can listen to past recordings, just where she's kind of detailing what the results have been. And we're also having, key speakers each week kind of updating on each of the counties as well as what's happening in the city.
Yeah, it's very interesting. It's nice to have. They will be able to break out those results by county, and they have in some respect. Although we don't have a county specific report yet, but Anjali's been very helpful in that regards as well. So I also wanted to mention that the other attachment that we sent out was, well, I guess two. One was in the Philadelphia Fund. It was on their process and procedure for their grant making and their orientation guide for their committee members, who are mostly grant makers, who are serving to distribute the COVID-19 United Way / Philadelphia Foundation funding. And I think they're at about $8.5 million from what I can tell from local news reports and things of that nature. They have had a second, what's that?
Yeah,
there we
go. 10.
Wow, if you don't watch your stuff every day, it goes up. But that's a good thing, because we have a favorite saying here: a rising tide floats all boats. So I think each of us has different networks from which we can raise funding, and I think that this has been indicative of that. But so that guide's interesting because it at least shows their approach and what they're doing, in case you're looking for something to model as you look at the distribution of grants from your side. And the other thing that I also sent out was a note that Sydney had sent out from Philanthropy Network. They're going to be coordinating, I believe it's with Penn School, on an analysis of the grant making. So what's happening from the grant making side. So that they'll be able to see that as well. So I would encourage everybody on the call to participate in those. I know many of you got that initial email from Sydney saying, would you participate if asked? And we all said yes, of course. So I encourage you to do that. Okay.
And so just to add to what Beth was saying about the partnership with Philanthropy Network and the Center for High Impact Philanthropy at the University of Pennsylvania, and it's also in partnership with William Penn and LendFest. So it's going to be a dashboard that's being created currently as we speak. And so we've asked, just as the initial phase 1 rounds, for what this dashboard will look like is we're asking for all the pooled funds to send in their information around the types of the applications and grantees that they're receiving applications from, as well as just the need in terms of how much they're granting, what it's going towards. And then the dashboard is going to be collecting all of that information, consolidating it so that we can see how many organizations are receiving funding from several different funding sources, what that all looks like. And then that's just going to be the first phase of it. We've been receiving a number of requests from our membership and beyond around just, who in total is being funded by various institutions that don't even have pooled funds. And so that will be considered for the phase 2 of what this dashboard looks like, and it'll continue to evolve as this crisis continues to evolve.
Great. Thank you, Shira. So Kathy Bronner, I know you're on the call. Is there anything you'd like to add from the county's perspective?
Not really. I mean, we're, grateful for what all of the funders are doing right now. Right now, everything's run out of the Emergency Operations Center. We're working closely with the Chester County Food Bank to make sure that, the food is addressed. Just trying to put out fires and, stay abreast of what everything's happening. So this was great to hear what the different foundations were doing.
Thank you. We appreciate all the work that the county's been doing as well. One thing that the county has been doing, and hopefully you're all getting their the summary at the end of the day that sends out what their emergency status looks like. It has some nonprofit related issues sometimes on there as well. So if you haven't already signed up for the county's emergency department notifications, I would suggest you do that, because that's an interesting document as well. And if you don't have the document and you want me to send you the last one, I'll forward you the one I have so that you can figure out how to sign up for that.
Beth, I wanted to just add, there's a great resource. I believe it was the person from Vanguard that was talking about collecting, data in terms of needs. Chester County is obviously, as well as the whole Philadelphia region and the whole state, has been also utilizing 211. Or if you referral, and what's share here, it's called pa.211counts.org, and it's real-time stats on what people are calling for. So that should give you some idea, and you can search it by county, by zip code. You can search it for just last week, for the last 30 days, for the last year, so you can see some trend lines in terms of what people are calling for, and you can get geographic to pull that information. So that's a really big, I think it's a really big help. I know they've gotten 5,000 calls in the last 7 days. So that's a great resource. The other thing I just wanted to mention as well is one of the areas that we are starting to hyper focus on is obviously financial stability. That is one of the 3 core areas that we focus on. You may or may not know we have a United Way Financial Stability Center, which is located inside the Chester County Career Link facility. It's the only one of its kind in the state of Pennsylvania in a Career Link facility, where we fund navigators that work with people. We fund counseling services, and we've got a number of other nonprofit. Even though that building is closed, we remain open online, and our navigator has been working with people on the phone. We are working with Clarify right now as well to expand the services that they have online in terms of budgeting and crisis management from a financial standpoint. We are continuing our counseling services using Family Service of Chester County. Does our counseling, and they're doing those online. We suspect when that building finally opens again, I sit on the County Workforce Development Board, and as of yesterday, we had a call. The March numbers for Chester County was 12.5 unemployment claims. And so they're expecting a lot of challenges related to being served people. So we're, our board is ready to beef up, our funding for possibly a second navigator in that area, because we do believe there's going to be a lot of needs in terms of financial stability. And I would point you to the ALICE project, which was funded by United Ways through the State Association of United Ways in Pennsylvania. There are specific stats on population, and ALICE is the people that live above the federal poverty line, below the self-sufficiency line. In Chester County, that number of ALICE and poverty was 27% in the wealthiest county in the state. So there was already a lot of people that weren't able to be financially stable. So that's an area of our focus for Chester County, and we're gonna really keep our eye on that closely with the county, because we think that's going to be an emerging need, maybe a month, 2 months, 3 months from now, as some of these forgiveness and these programs, when those payments start to kick in again, I think there's going to be a lot of people in crisis.
Beth,
Thanks.
if I can follow up on that, this is Kathy. I just the PA 211 counts. We are also tracking what's coming into Refer Web, which is our online community resource directory, and comparing it to PA 21 counts. So we're tracking that on a weekly basis, looking at trends. We're really looking for trends of need trends. So just to let you know that we have a spreadsheet comparing those two. So, and then we're also tracking what's coming into our information and referral agencies regarding needs. So we have that data if anyone is interested in it at some point.
That's great, Kathy. Will you be posting on any site of that, or is it data?
It's internal data right now, but I'm sure, you know, I can talk with Kim, and I'm sure we can, you know, share it with the nonprofits as they, or the funders as they need it.
Okay. Thank you. I appreciate that. And while we're on the subject of counting, well, any other COVID-19 related things, because I wanted to touch on the census as well before we ended this call.
Hey, this is Howard from the Potsdam Area Health and Wellness Foundation.
Hi, Howard.
I just want to applaud, you know, the group. I think this is my second, maybe third time, but the sense of collaboration and sharing in this time is really encouraging, and your thoughtfulness to the response. I really appreciate it. And with that, just at the foundation, we've worked to pool fund together with the Montgomery County Funders Response Team. I think it's a really unique group, and it was actually a new collaboration that formed in response, and that launched last week, and we're currently working to receive and work through the process of vetting applications. I don't have the exact numbers, not on the on that particular team, but I'll have that information poured out later on today. We were actually in the middle of a grant round, you know, of course, when this kind of ramped up, and we continued to you know, continue with that grant round, and at the same time work with our current grants to be as flexible as possible to allow them to shift dollars where needed. And program officers really reached out and were listening, and really to our surprise, a lot of them were able to ramp up. Some, of course, you know, operate and need to make some tough choices, but their ability to ramp up, in the case of CHDC, they were able to ramp up the telehealth pretty quickly. We are hearing a lot in the area of food security. Cluster is at work, but there is a need for, you know, the community to talk and collaborate, and we were able to pull together a convening actually yesterday of a number of restaurants and small businesses, churches really stepped up, but they are, you know, looking at, you know, the supply and looking at how, you know, they can all work together. So we're encouraged, but there's still tons of work that needs to be done there. We are able to listen through an organization called TCN, Tri-County Network, in addition to, you know, collect information. I'm really interested, Kathy, in the way that the data is being collected. I think that's one of the gaps that I'm seeing in terms of, you know, the agencies to be able to share, collect, you know, information in a meaningful way. But we'll be making some decisions on our current grant round within the next 2 weeks, and then you know, at the same time, leadership is looking at, you know, what other kinds of response we can have in terms of a COVID-19. I wouldn't say emergency response, but maybe looking at the short term and also, what this looks like in the long term for, a lot of the stable organizations who are the backbone of the Pottstown area.
Thank you.
Howard, it's Ash. Oh, sorry.
No, go ahead, Ashley.
I'm curious about trauma informed. Pottstown's been a hub. They've done a great job of making the trauma informed work kind of permeable to a lot of different subsectors. And as they reflect on this and what we might see in the future in terms of domestic violence and the health of our children and adverse childhood experiences, I'm wondering if you all have talked at all about those particular providers and their needs or what they anticipate coming in the future.
Yeah, so as you're familiar with, PEAK and TTIC, the Trauma Informed Community Connection, is really spearheaded and led currently by the school district. So with the closure of schools, things kind of interrupted some of the planned and scheduled meetings that the group had, because the school had to really ramp up, and they're providing about 11,000, 12,000 packets of food on a weekly basis, and that was their primary focus. In the meantime, the group did convene, and I am aware that the conversation did take place yesterday. Again, I don't, until we have our debrief later on this afternoon, I won't learn anything else other than that is one of the groups that was able to ramp up and kind of transfer their service delivery in a virtual capacity, and they're really confident that they're going to be able to continue, and they're planning and continue to schedule some of their activities, but in a of course in a virtual environment at this time.
Thank you, Howard. I appreciate that update. I actually have some donors who fund up in that part of the county, so we've been looking at the cluster and other groups as well. I wanted to just briefly, and I know this call is almost over, wanted to briefly mention the census. Hopefully all of you have access to that website, which shows what our response rate. I think in Chester County, when I checked it last night, we were someplace in the 52% range in terms of our response. Any specific comments on your work in the census area? Okay. So, would the group like to meet again in say 2 weeks or so, just to kind of share where we're at that time?
Yeah, and I'm wondering, it's just a suggestion. Again, there's a lot of needs going on, but we had a big conversation around food, and given that we anticipate that that's going to be challenging, I wonder if we might want to have somebody from the food bank come and talk to us about that. Rather than have us all individually call them, maybe we could schedule a Zoom call with them.
Sounds like a great idea. Tamla, did you want to do that sooner rather than later, or do you want to take the 2 weeks time frame?
It's so hard to know.
I know.
I think we monitor it. Let's plan on 2 weeks, and if we feel like we need to have one sooner, I'm sure we can get one together.
Okay. All right.
And I would also like to add that in addition to the food bank, maybe somebody from the county who's also helping to coordinate some of the FEMA meal distributions, because that's going to be happening. I think the food is coming into Harrisburg Monday, and then by the time it gets through the rest of the counties in the state, it'll be available by the end of next week. So I think having somebody on that call would be really helpful.
Okay. Sure, I'll reach out and see what we can find from there. Yeah. Kathy, maybe if you have any direct information, you can send me an email, but I can reach out as well.
Yeah, I don't know if it's Kim Bowman or somebody on her team.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking. It might be coming out of that area.
Yeah, it is coming out of Kim's, because I had a conversation with her about it, but it is in Kim Bowman's shop.
Okay. Right. That sounds great. Any other comments for the group before we go on to our next calls?
Yeah, I would suggest we have that call around food insecurity sooner rather than later. There does seem to be a lot of confusion around that. 2 days ago, I spoke to a foundation who said,
oh, Chris, you
cut off, Chris.
Nope, sorry. I somehow got muted. There were there were issues related, they asked me if there were issues related to supply chain and food in Chester County, because someone from the food bank had told someone at that foundation there were no issues with acquiring food. But there was an article in the Daily Local this week with the executive director of the food bank saying there were problems getting.
Right.
We're hearing it from the pantries, not from the food bank, but from the pantries that are having challenges because they don't get all of their food from the food bank. A lot of their food is donated directly to the pantry, and that distribution channel's pretty much been shut down with people not being able to get food in supermarkets and not being able to go out to deliver it to the food bank. So I think having some kind of clarity around this issue, because I suspect all of us that are doing grant funding around COVID are going to continue to get requests from food cupboards and pantries for food. And so having some kind of a direct pipeline or ongoing update from the food bank as to what is the current status of food in Chester County and the pocketed needs are that maybe they can't meet would really help us to laser focus.
Perhaps we can try for next Friday at this time. You know, I could reach out to Kathy and others, and certainly if you have a better connection, let me know that, send me an email. Would that work for the group? Sure. I guess I have to ask you as well if we can use your number.
Yeah, can I,
you get back.
It might be Thursday, might be a better.
Yeah, I can't do Friday morning.
Can't do Friday? Okay, hold on, let me look.
I can't, yeah.
And just a note too, we do have a food funders meeting coming up at Philanthropy Network on Tuesday from 2:15 to 3:30. So it's not going to be obviously very hyper local to Chester County, but it will be kind of the regional effort of what is happening with regards to food insecurity and food access in relation to COVID-19.
What's that time frame again?
It's Tuesday at 2:15 to 3:30.
Thank you, Shira. That's great. So Shira, if you could look into Thursday at 8:30 maybe then?
Yep.
And if the group's amenable for it, I'll see whether we can get some representatives from the food bank and from, it is probably Kim's area.
Beth, I believe Phoebe has been appointed the COVID director.
Yes.
And is coordinating everything on their end.
Okay, thank you. I will reach out then on behalf of the group and see if they could be available for a call on Thursday morning. Okay. All right, everybody. I know Steph and I have to jump on another call, but I want to thank everybody for your great participation today. I agree. I think the sharing is really valuable to the team. And certainly don't hesitate to reach out to any members of the team if you need additional things. I will send the other information I promised on the groups that added with me.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Everyone have a great weekend.
You too, guys.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye-bye. Thanks.